So hello everyone and welcome to today's virtual session to help us disrupt negative thinking on aging. My name is Kathy Bollinger. I'm the Managing Director of York County Community Foundation's Embracing Aging, and we're so excited to have you here. This is the second of a series of 30-minute discussions we're having with people age 50 and older in York County, where we'll come together and we'll hear their insights about aging. We'll hear their stories and share their experiences and hear tips, and all desired to help us, I don't know, to disrupt all this negative and shameful talk about aging. I want to let everyone know that we are recording today's session, and it will be available on our website, which is www.embracingaging.org, in a couple of days. And to sign up for future events, you can also check out our event calendar on that website. I'm so excited for today's session, which is called Give Ageism the Boot. It starts with attitude. And I'm so excited to have Pat Miller joining us today. I first met Pat, several years ago when she was in HR at Rabbit Transit, and we partnered on a session designed to help people become more aware of their biases. So when Embracing Aging started to host these series about dismantling ageism and thinking differently about aging, we knew that we needed to invite Pat to join us for a session today. And I'm so excited that she's here and she agreed. Welcome, Pat.
Thank you. Thank you, Kathy. I appreciate the advantage and offer of being here. So today, we all know about bias in the workplace and bias against us in many areas that we engage in. But today, I want to talk about how we can meet the challenge and how our own attitudes can make us more resilient and able to meet this challenge of ageism. So I'm going to start a PowerPoint here, so just give me a second. Okay, hopefully everybody can see that. Okay, because I want to show some pictures. This is a picture of goats in Morocco. If you've never been to Morocco, I've seen goats before jump fences and do some crazy things, but I've never seen things like the goats in Morocco.
Wow.
The goats in Morocco, they're stronger than we think they could be. They can get up in these trees in seconds. They're wiser than we know because there isn't any vegetation. How did they know to go up into these argon trees and that the fruit would sustain them? And they've just been adaptable. So that's what I'm going to be talking about today, how we can become resilient, how we can become stronger, wiser, and more adaptable. So just think about it. What do people see when they see you coming? Do they see somebody that's strong? What are they seeing that makes them think you're a strong person? There's power in the perception of being strong. I mean, you're seen as more employable. You're seen as a leader. You might be a leader in your Bible school studies, your church studies, your volunteer groups. You're seen as a contributor in any of the organizations you may belong to. And more importantly, I think you're seen as valued in your family if we're strong. So are you living up to your capabilities, or do you think about what your limitations are more? So let's just talk about that for a minute. My next question is, take a moment to think of the last time you doubted your strength. I don't know about you, but I've doubted my strength many times. You just never know what's going to happen, so you're afraid to do something. You might be afraid to do this Zoom meeting because I'm the type of person that could get out in front and talk to everybody in person. But doing a Zoom meeting, I need strength to do that because it doesn't seem natural to me. So there's all different types of things that can hold you back if you don't try. How do you project strength? I once remember my husband and I were camping, and we were setting up our Coleman pop-up camper, and a gentleman pulled in next to us, and when he got out of the camper, we found that he had both arms amputated, both hands amputated, and he had 2 hooks. That was before we have a lot of technology that we do today. But my husband called over to him and said, give us a couple minutes, we'll be over to help you. And the gentleman very kindly said, oh, I'll be okay. And when we got our camper up, we looked over and he had already set his up much faster than we did. And that has stuck with me over the years, as sometimes you can live up to your capabilities, or he could have sat back and said, I'm limited. So there's different things that we limit ourselves. My last one, when I'm thinking of what I last limited, my son was home from overseas and he was home for a few weeks. And of course it's COVID, so you can't do much. But I wanted him to see me as a strong person. And I wanted him to be enjoying the time he was here. I said, well, why don't we go on a hike? And he said, sure, Mom, because I used to hike with him and do backpacking, like 30 years ago. So he picks out Peters Mountain. If you've ever been up to Peters Mountain, it's above Harrisburg a little bit. And Peters Mountain is straight up a mile. I mean, the whole hike's only about 2.5 miles long, but it's straight up and it's very rocky. So I'm going up in this picture on the right. This is what the trail looked like most of the way, and some of it very much narrower and much rockier. But I was just going right along, and my son says, boy, I'm impressed with your aerobic ability, Mom. So Mom's feeling pretty good. So we get to the top of the hill, and we come across the rock path that you see, the pile on the other side. And I'm not sure if the picture gives the right dimensions, but it was about twice my height. So I said, oh, the person on this side of me says, the little man on this side says, well, you can't go over that. I'm limiting myself. My son says, well, let's see what's up here. So he climbs up and he's, oh, Mom, you've got to come up here. This is a beautiful top. You can see out over the river. It's gorgeous. Plus, the trail's on the other side. He said, I'll help you. So I take a deep breath and I think, I can do this. When the other little person on this side of me is saying, you're going to fall flat on your face. But for my son, I'm on this side. I'm doing this. I'm going for it. So up over the rocks I went. And then I get up there and I find out it's straight down on the one side. So I take a deep breath again. And then I look and I see it's about 20, 25 yards of these huge boulders that you've got to go step from one to the other. And I took another deep breath. And he said, I'll take your hand, Mom, you'll be okay. And over we scrambled these rocks. And then we went down the other side. And then we went the path and down the other side. But when I got through this hike, when you do something like that and you test your limitations, what you think are your limitations, you have this so much feeling of accomplishment. So when we step outside our comfort zone, we have this accomplishment. And it's not just even our physical strength, it's our ability to project strength through our personality. What do they see when they see you coming? I had a girlfriend's mother who was just the coolest mom I'd ever known. And you don't ever want to act like you're in your 20s again or dress like that. But she had the beautiful white hair, beautiful convertible, and had a license plate that said Foxy Grandma. And she was just loving life. And you just never thought of her as being weak. And she just was that type of a person. So when you think about that, think of how you're limiting yourself, what the little talk man on one side is saying, then try to listening to the other talk person that's saying, go for it. Or take life by the tail and go for it. Because it shows, and you get invited to do a lot more things. So the next thing I want to talk about is in this strength. How do you project in strength? What are we projecting? Many of us, as we age, the computer is just, we didn't grow up with a mouse in our hand. So it's always a challenge for us to learn things. And we've got to keep learning every day. Because I know there's some people on this talk today that FaceTime with their grandchildren every day. They've learned this different social media things that can allow you to keep communicating, and it keeps you growing. It keeps you not being negative during these times. And Our grandchildren will, children will appreciate everything we can learn on this. But when you're projecting this, and when you're projecting to other people, you're branding yourself. And how are we branding ourselves? Are we branding ourselves as being old? Or are we branding ourselves as being full of life? And as I talk to my students at Penn State York, in social media, you can brand yourself, and employers are looking at it. And if you brand yourself as, even your email addresses, your email address, Drinker 101, well, that says something to your employer. Or if all your posts on Facebook are pictures of drinking, your employer thinks something. And when you're older, that branding is very exceptional too, because we need to show our strength on that. Our email address doesn't have to say old 66. You know, look at what you're branding yourself as being. And even on your Facebook, see what you have as private. Look at that. You can put your birth date, your day, so everybody compliments you on your birthday, but you can put your year and put that as private. Everybody doesn't have to know what year you were born. On Facebook and other media, you know, project what strengths you have. Show pictures of who's doing things. Believe me, I have the pictures of that rock climb on my Facebook page. You know, that I've accomplished that. And what comments, and even without the social media, what comments are we making to everybody? When we go to dinner, are we talking about every ache and pain we have? When we talk to people on the phone, we need to look and see, are we projecting strength? And Google yourself, see what comes up. Record yourself on the phone when you're on the phone with people. See how you're coming across. So that's the one area of just projecting strength, whether it's in our personality or our physical strength. The next one I want to talk about is wisdom, because we're wiser than we know. It is shown by many of the technologies today of brain scans and everything that, and we know, we don't need a brain scan to know that we forget things. I just a little while ago forgot a word I wanted to say. That's common. You just have to get around that. But at the same time, we have had a lot of experiences and we build on those experiences. So we can process things a lot faster than younger people. We can look at different experiences and come out with different cognitive outlines in our brain that shows on the scans. And this leads to better able to react to situations and work our way through them. Older people have more emotional IQ. And if you look on LinkedIn, they're looking for employees now that have more emotional IQ. And it's been shown that older people have more emotional IQ. We have more empathy of talking to other people, of working with other people. We can see more things of how we're going to figure things out. And we need to learn to get that across to everyone. We're more adept at working with groups and challenges and stress. So how do we do this? We embrace our curiosity. Learn to look for things and look at things and be curious about them. Learn something every day. When we were coming back from our trip, my son was driving and we pulled in for gas. And I said, how did you remember that the gas tank was on the right? And he looked at me and he said, well, Mom, because your car's over the 2010. And every car over 2010 has to have that gas pump right on the gauge. And there's an arrow on one side that says it's on the right or an arrow on the other side that says it's on the left. Well, I've been driving that car for years and I didn't know that. So sometimes we just have to be open to learn something new every day. Be less judgmental. I don't know about you, but how many older people, and ourselves included probably, look at the younger people and roll our eyes when we see tattoos and piercings. We wonder when they say they don't have the money, but yet they're getting their nails done every week. But if we be less judgmental, we will have a lot more acceptance of that younger generation, and they will accept us more. I know my grandmother, she never made a comment on my miniskirts when I was in my 20s. So I always respected her. She always respected me, and I respected her. We try not to learn things sometimes because we're afraid. And if we start something, we fail. But when you think about the Breakfast of Champions, athletes, they didn't start out knowing their sport that well. They had to learn it. And they learned it in small chunks. And we have to learn to have our patience with ourselves as we're learning things and not give up. Another thing, when we're dealing with other people, especially younger people, and they bring up something they want to try, we have a tendency to say, been there, done that, or that won't work. And maybe another way of answering that is, can we compare how we tried it before and how it would work differently today so this project can be successful? So that makes the person not shut down and get defensive, and they want to work with us, because no one's ever walked into the same stream twice. The water's always moving. So what happened before might not necessarily happen today, but we could learn from it. And that's one of the things we can project and work with younger people, that we have some knowledge that they can learn from, but they have a lot of tools in their toolbox that we could learn from. So when we're talking about that, and I'm looking at this Mensa puzzle, and I don't know if you've recognized this, but my grandmother, when she was in her 90s, was very good at this Mensa puzzle. And she used to beat my son at it all the time because we're just not able to have as many experiences as she had doing this puzzle. So people wonder if the glass is half empty or half full. They miss the point. The glass is refillable. We can keep learning and keep refilling our glass. So take a moment when you gave up learning something because it was difficult, or when you were frustrated that someone didn't respect your advice. Next, third thing I want to talk about is more adaptable than we imagined. So as we become better at doing a lot of different specific things over our lifetime, we learn what's important and isn't important. We're able to peg it to something that maybe a tragedy that's happened or something that's worked against us, and we've been able to overcome it. And as long as we're open-minded, we can overcome it. This is my mother, and she's in her 30s. My father died of a military accident when I was just 7. My mother had quit working before I was born, well, before she was married, and hadn't worked for a number of years, and she never drove a car. So we had this big old Nash out there, and my grandfather, who was very ill, was giving her guidance, because we didn't have YouTube back then, to fix this water pump on the car, which she did. Then she learned to drive with my grandfather in the front seat, falling asleep because he was ill, me in the back seat, hanging out the window at age 7, saying, "Mom, you're over the line."
Oh my gosh.
You're parking, you're close to the curb. But adaptable. We are adaptable. And it doesn't matter what we're looking at, at our age, we're more adaptable. I'm not, Cleo Wade is somebody that's making the talk on the talk shows. I'm not going to read her whole thing, but I just want to read this last one. It says, "Just remember, when it comes to your life, you are not only the artist, but you are the masterpiece as well." So take a moment to think what you've done during this pandemic and what you've had to adapt to. Think about Tom Brady, the quarterback for the Patriots. He was called the GOAT, the greatest of all times. At 41, he's still showing us he's strong. He's wiser in making changes for himself. He's not just letting what's going to happen to him and let people take advantage of him at one. So he changed. He went to Tampa after so many years. He's adaptable. So be the GOAT, greatest of all times generation, strong, wise, adaptable. And let's talk about now what small steps we can take to see how others perceive us or how we perceive ourselves. Well, thank you. And let's get some tips and things from everyone else now. I'll let back to Kathy.
Wow, thank you, Pat. Very informative about, first of all, the goats in the tree. Wow, it's new to me. So yeah, we want to open it up now for questions and comments and just some discussion about, how are you showing your wisdom, your resiliency? How are you adapting? So anyone have anything you'd like to share and ask Pat?
I can't think of anything.
Linda, it looks like you're muted.
You're muted, Linda.
With me at my age, technology is not the greatest thing for me, and so with Zoom, I do in my volunteer life, I have somebody else that's doing the Zoom for me because I'm the president of our Rotary Club, and I need to concentrate on the other things that are happening. But in my business, I did, get the Zoom and Pat, as you know, with Pat Leonard, working with her and testing it out before I, try to manage it myself. But so that's one thing I'm doing to try to adapt to this new world, because clients, they'd rather do things either on the phone and instead of coming in to the office.
And that's helped a lot of businesses stay alive during these times.
For sure. Thank you, Linda, for sharing.
So I think, go ahead.
Go ahead.
So I think one of the things is you just have to jump in. So I was in South Carolina in March when everything shut down, and the company I was working for said, hey, we're going to go virtual in 3 days. Can you do this? And you go, yeah, I'm just going to figure it out. So part of it is just jumping in. And what I found is because I was an early initiator of some of these things, then I could help other people along the way. If technology is the thing that holds you back, me too. Find other people, and when you are with them, ask them one thing, one technology thing, especially if you're working with your children or your grandchildren. Get them to show you or give you one idea about it. And if you just do that every time you interact with people, you will be surprised at, it's just those little things like Pat was saying about the arrow on the gas tank. One thing. And you will get put in places where you get pushed to learn new stuff, and YouTube is your friend. So if you can't figure it out, there's amazing stuff on YouTube.
So I've been very fortunate that I've had many members of my family to live to be quite of older age. I had a grandmother that lived to be 103 years old. Now, she was very resilient, and she didn't have to worry about branding. So, Pat, you had talked about branding. So much of our culture is about anti-ageism. People using Botox, the cosmetic surgery, the celebrities, the stay young commercials. So what would you say would be key things to change that culture of branding?
Just your attitude. I had a grandmother too, two grandmothers, and a mother that raised me, and both of them were very adaptable. And of course, that was not in the Botox era, but my grandmother, when she was 97, right before she died, was dressed as a witch, riding on the back of a motorcycle, leading a Halloween parade. She exhibited strength, wisdom. She wrote an article for the newspaper the day she died at 97. She wasn't concerned. She was as wrinkled could be, and she was a stooped over lady, but you never looked at her as old. She was vibrant. I think it's within ourselves, not what we do to touch up ourselves. And I've got to buy into that culture, because that's a culture you never win at.
You're right, Pat. It is a culture that you never win at. And I just think it's really important, though, for all of us to understand that our value doesn't relate to what we look like compared to a younger person, or what it is that we do compared to a younger person. Our value is in our wisdom, is in our life stories, is in our experiences, our relationships. And you know, so those are the things that I just every time I'm out and I hear somebody say something, I try to hone in on that message, Joel, so that, you know, we are just helping people to see a different perspective, because, you know, there are some people who maybe aren't able to do some of the things that others do at their age, but that doesn't make them less than. And
No,
it doesn't
not
mean
at
that
all.
they're not as, you know, a valuable person that can teach us things in different ways. So just keeping that in mind, I think, too.
Yeah, strength is not how physically strong you are.
Mm-hmm.
It's not letting the self-talk keep you back from what you can do, whether it's on technology, whether it's on physical strength, whether it's on going out and doing something new. It's not listening to that other side of you that wants to talk you down.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions for Pat? Other tips, ideas, ways you're showing resilience or adapting? Ways you're branding yourself?
So I'll talk again. I was working with a gentleman who is getting ready to retire. He is 70 years old, has a PhD in chemistry out of Connecticut. And he was just at this place where he needed to figure out what was next with him. So we actually went through a process called Career Direct, but it actually gave him a lot of insight into the many gifts and abilities and talents that he had. And so now, just after that sort of couple hours that we spent together, he has started his new LLC. He's got his new email address. He feels like COVID, being stuck in his house for the last 3 months or 6 months or whatever, has been his opportunity for retirement. And he goes, yeah, that's not for me. And so now he is all set to go out and mentor high school students. And part of it is, how do you take those gifts that you have now and move them forward? How do you invest them in other people? Relationships, like Kathy said, are so important. How are you growing them? How's your network growing, right?
Mm-hmm.
If the only thing that happens is, you know, you're losing touch with folks, or maybe you've lost some folks, which just is really hard. You know, how is it that you have folks who are in their teens and in their 20s and 30s and 40s and 50s? And so that's one of the things I love about Pat, is she's just so dynamic, and she has so many connections from folks at all sort of stages of life.
Thank you. Just to say one thing about connections. My son had worked for Google for a little while, and then was an engineer for the web page of Expedia. But while he was staying home with me, he was giving a national speech at a national conference, one of their group sessions. And he's all ready to do that. It's 20 of 11. His goes on at 11 o'clock. And where my village is, our electricity went off. So needless to say, I lost Wi-Fi. Then he said, wait a minute, Mom, what's happening to the cell service? I'm down to 1 bar. Well, he's about panicking. And I said, let me see what I can do. We've got 20 minutes. I'm making calls to people. I finally got a hold of our church, which is only 10 minutes away. Said, do you have a room? Can he come over and use your Wi-Fi? Yep, bring him over. Over we went. He sat down. He was ready to go. Within 20 minutes, we got there. They gave him a room and set up. So keeping those networks, we have that ability as we're older to think through things, think what we can do. Our minds are quicker in that. Might not be able to come up with the names of things or remember those things, but I can have the connections. And I think that's one of the things we have to have as we're getting older. We have to keep those connections.
Wow. That is so true, Pat. And I've so enjoyed hearing from you this morning and having you share your stories, your experiences, your insights to help us think about aging differently. And I will share that Pat is a volunteer for Embracing Aging, and we are so just so appreciative of her sharing her time with us and helping inform the work that we do in the community. And as you can see, she has a lot to share with us and provide such wonderful input and value to our work. So at this point in time, I want to remind everybody of our next event, or announce our next event that is coming up. It is scheduled for Thursday, October 15th. It's at 11 a.m. in the morning. It is with Sharon Christ, and her title is, "Hey, Younger Self, Think About Your Aging Now." So she believes that we should be thinking about our older decades when we are younger, and that is a key to quality of aging. So she's going to help us discover, no matter what your age, how to shift in our purpose and engagement not only benefits our own aging, but it also benefits those we love and our community too. So again, a huge thank you to you, Pat, today for sharing, and for all of you for joining us today, sharing your time with us. And look for this recording of this on our website, which is again, www.embracingaging.org, within the next week. Thanks everyone, and have a great day. Bye-bye.
Thank you for being here.